Hey guys, Josh Ritchie here with The Path to Natural. Today's episode 6, and it is January the 20th, Tuesday. How's everything going? Hope it's a great day. Gonna start right off here with a news report I got. How to ease the burden of student debt. Well, oftentimes that's a fallacy in and of itself, but I'm gonna go into it in some detail anyway. Apparently, consumer price overall remained historically low. Wow, that's a huge surprise. Good luck trying to sell anything for what you paid for it. Prices continue to go down, mostly in my opinion as an economic response to the fact that people just don't have enough money. However, tuition continues to be the fastest growing expense we've got. It's up to $1.2 trillion collectively. And, well, Jesus, $1.2 trillion. That's insane. The annual tuition inflation has slowed down a little bit since 2004, but it still averages about 6% overall, or over the course of a decade, rather, so the last 10 years. Pretty significant. So if you yourself thinking of heading off to college, or have anybody else thinking of going off to college, just something to think about there. That bubble, mountain as they're calling it, that's not going to go on indefinitely. Everything has a downside to it, and how that downside is going to occur, well, that is yet to be seen. But I suppose it could potentially go on, especially if Obama passes this legislation he's pushing for free 2 years of college for everybody. Sure, it could continue going up like public education, but in my opinion, and the opinion of many other people, that's going to decline in the future as well. So, just one man's opinion. Anyway, in 2013, 42.2 million student borrowers were averaging a balance of more than $25,000. Doesn't sound like a whole lot. Most people own a car that costs more than that. I've made my mistakes and owned cars that cost more than that. Unfortunately, those were mistakes. Those are the reasons I don't have a farm right now. Not because I declared bankruptcy or anything, but just because I chose to spend money on those instead of purchasing land, which, let's be honest, 3 cars, you could probably get a decent-sized chunk of land, especially being the average vehicle now, a new vehicle anyways, ranging a minimum of $15,000 for the just smallest little Mazda 2 type thing you can find, all the way up to $50,000 for a truck. So, yeah, granted, I was purchasing in the middle there when I did purchase new vehicles, but just for somebody getting straight out of college, were you buying a brand new car? Or getting straight out of high school, were you buying a brand new car? Doesn't really matter because your pay is probably about the same in both those positions. You got real lucky if you're able to walk into a decent paying job. Nonetheless, you weren't buying a brand new vehicle right off the bat. You have to wait until you get settled, wait till you can actually pay a rent, buy food for yourself. More than likely, you're going right back to your parents' house where you came from, or grandparents, wherever you happen to live with. Maybe you're lucky able to keep some roommates and keep your part-time job at the pizza shop or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that the only way you're getting rid of those student debts, other than paying them off, is by working in the public or nonprofit sector. There are plenty of programs for loan forgiveness or cancellation there, which I don't know where that money's coming from. Oh, wait, yes, I do. My pocket. The taxpayers, the never-ending teat that keeps on giving out free money. Thank you, federal government. Moral of the story there. Do you really want $25,000 or more in student loan debt? The fact of the matter is that number is extremely low. And I didn't get the exact figures, but that number is low because more than half of college attendees drop out before getting their degree. So you have maybe, I'll say a very high number, which I'm confident is high. Say half the people who initially go to college and accrue student loan debt actually get a degree out of that. It means you have another half who have maybe 10, 15,000. That's what I got out with. I had about 15,000 in student loan debt. It took me about 4 years of aggressively paying it down because they do have extremely high interest rates. Some of them you're looking 9 to 15%. Well, man, that's loan sharking right there. So think twice before you go to college. It's not necessarily a great idea for everybody. And then think that the other half the people, and I'm sure less, who are actually graduating, they're most likely graduating with $50,000 to $60,000 of debt just from a normal college. I attended for a year and a half and was pretty creative with my financing. Worked to supply some of the money. Wish I'd have worked more, but therein lies some of the reason I ended up dropping out of college. Just didn't have the discipline and so on. However, instead of going to college, just because it's not for everybody. However, if you do want to fit into the system of Legos, so to speak, you're going to have a college degree, because the fact of the matter is just about everyone else does have a college degree, at least anyone in a competitive business world. And it's not that you needed a college degree, but a business wants it.
Now, with all that being said, it is important to note, even with most businesses looking for a college degree, it's just not for everybody. Don't go to it just because everybody else is doing it. You know, the fact of the matter is you can be at the exact same age with 4 years of work experience, little to no debt. The only debt you're going to incur is what you would have already incurred through starting your own business or going into work for somebody else anyway. You have a car payment, you'd have possibly a mortgage, you would have any bills associated with your business had you started one. So why not just go into it right off the bat, or go work for somebody else to learn? You're going to accept a lower wage because you don't have a college degree. You're going to get experience in a job field you're interested in, or it'll just give you time to have fun, enjoy life, and figure out what you actually want to do. Instead of going to college for something that somebody told you you should do, why not take the time and actually figure out what you want to do? Why waste the money? Why waste the money? Why buy a vehicle or 2 vehicles or a house potentially when you could save that money and actually put it to use, one, building your own business, building a community, building a user base before you have a product to give that user or user base. There's a number of different things you can do with that 4 years beyond wasting away in college. So I encourage you to think critically about that before you yourself go to college or you send your kids off to college. But yet again, if you do want to fit in that framework of the Lego framework, as I call it, of American society, or more or less world society, where you're expected to have a college degree to work for any big company, then maybe college is for you. Maybe you're one of the people that just wants to go along with the program, retire out, and then get a small farm and be sustainable. In my opinion, that's not very sustainable. You're just fitting into the system and more or less having a garden later on. You're going to a retirement home, which, your retirement home can itself be sustainable, but your life isn't. You can't have a sustainable life if you're just following along with the unsustainable program. However, if you're like me and many of us out there, we're midway through trying to find a better way, make our own path. So do whatever you can to fit into, or I guess get out of the mold, really. There's nothing to fit into because this is such a less traveled road. With that, just wanted to encourage a little bit of critical thinking and outside the box thinking. Just because everyone says that's the way to go doesn't necessarily mean that is the way to go. Under that, though, the CDC just released a statement saying that this year's flu vaccine is only 23% effective. Really? It's been better than that in previous seasons? Surprising. Apparently, it was actually 51% effective in the 2013-2014 season, which, man, I had no idea. I get sick as a dog every time I get it regardless, so well, I didn't know it was helping anything other than I'm required to do it for where I work. But apparently it has been down even lower to 10 and 21% in 2004-2005, and 56 to 60% was a high point in 2009-2010, which I believe that was the year they gave out the swine flu vaccine, H1N1 vaccine, and to a bunch of pregnant women and children, and then recalled it 3 months later because it was going to cause some long-term health problems. How do you recall a vaccine? You already shot me full of it, including the mercury, it's called the thermosol, and oftentimes aluminum in it. All those toxins, I mean, who knows how those react with your body. The fact of the matter is we can't actually get any good science to show us what happens long-term or how those things interact in our body, because the fact of the matter is all the funding for studies typically comes from the large corporations actually making the products. That's one reason we're not seeing any good research on GMOs, because let's face it, Monsanto's not going to pay a college money to do research against Monsanto's interests. If you were to do that without Monsanto's knowledge, they would stop funding you. 1, because they're losing money. 2, because you're working against their best interests. whenever you have a choice of where you give your money, you're going to give it to people who work in your benefit or at least don't work against you. So I'm confident Monsanto, Cargill, and all of them could find a better place to put their money that would be better for their financial interests, the stockholder interests. Same with Merck or Bayer, any of the companies that develop these vaccines. It just goes to highlight the fact that you need to stay healthy. Vaccines are not the end-all be-all. In fact, a lot of times vaccines are just ineffective, as we're seeing this year and back in 2004, 2005. In effect, vaccine's not going to help you at all. So keep up with a good exercise regimen, eat quality foods, stay away from the junk food as much as possible. Don't sit in front of your TV too often. Don't sit at your desk too much. Got to stay up and move. If you can get a what do they call those half ball things and a stand-up desk, I hear that's the best. I'm not about to do that, but I hear it's a very very effective way of maintaining a longer, healthier lifespan. So whatever you're able to do, implement that in your life. Take a good quality multivitamin. Consume your herbals if you're accepting of that. If not, I encourage you to look into it. There are a lot of herbal remedies out there that will just maintain a good quality health and are a lot cheaper than vitamins. Me, I'm still looking into the herbals. I know there are some good ones like echinacea. I'll drink echinacea as soon as I start to feel a cold coming on. But I also consume 12 to 14 grams of vitamin C immediately, on top of the 8 to 10 grams a day I already take, just to maintain good health. I'll tell you, I slacked off, got sick, so it just goes to show that maintaining that good regimen, or consistent regimen rather, of high vitamin C, for me anyway, has really helped a lot and paid off. So I'd encourage you to look into that and decide for yourself. I'm certainly not a doctor, and I'm not going to be making that call for you. With that, I'm going to get on to the next segment. Next segment is more or less working too long increases your alcohol consumption. This is likely just due to stress. There was an 11% increase among 330,000 people across 14 countries. It is important to note that this study is probably skewed a little bit because a lot of people consider drinks after work to still be work. That's just kind of silly, but you know, maybe different cultures, they really do conduct work activities, or it's still mandatory for them to be there at the bar or whatever afterwards drinking. So, however they determine that, and regardless of the skewed statistics, the number, either way though, does translate to approximately 2 million people drinking heavily because of work. And that is 14 drinks or more per week for women and 21 drinks per week for men, which sounds like a lot, but realistically, if you maybe have 3 beers a day each day after work, or you maybe have a beer a day during the work week, and on the weekend you crush like a 12-pack or something like that of something cheap like Bud Light, well, that's going to throw your results off a little bit. Most people wouldn't consider a beer a day to be excessive. That's 5 during the week. And for a female, then you have to consume another couple beers on top of that. And you're already excessively drinking. Well, that one night out at the club's going to get you over the top for everything on top of that, the next 9 beers. And what do they consider a beer? Is a real strong stout? Is that going to be considered 1 beer? Or is a real weak Bud Light you get from the grocery store that's maybe 2.5% alcohol, is that going to be considered a beer? Huge difference there. Maybe you're drinking O'Doul's just because you enjoy the flavor, as many beer drinkers really do enjoy the flavor of the beer, not necessarily the drunkenness. Not that I know of anybody complaining about the drunkenness, but plenty of people do consume alcohol because they enjoy the flavor. How does that translate into your life and your path to a more sustainable, more natural lifestyle? Well, don't overdo it. I've been definitely guilty of doing the same thing, of overdoing it, and you just get stressed out, worn out. You're doing a poor job at your job. You're doing a poor job on your side job as you're trying to prepare for that more sustainable lifestyle, trying to make that big purchase of the farm or homestead. You're not putting in the quality, you're not putting in the time you're stressing yourself out to make yourself sick then, reducing your immune system, which then goes back into maintaining good health. But add balance to your life. You can only have so many hours in a day. And you can't divide it up so evenly as to have 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of family. But you're going to have to do your best to split that up in an equitable manner. Some days of the week you just might not be able to have much time for yourself. So you have to cram more in on the weekends. You're not going to get the full 8 hours of sleep if you're working hard on 2 jobs. One is trying to start your own business or start your own sustainable life on the side, while the other one is the one that actually pays the bills. So think of ways to leverage those assets in your life, like your car. Make that your recording studio if you're going to do a podcast. Make it your mobile office if you're going to sell something online. Use your house, maybe rent out an extra room to somebody. That's not really for us. We've got kids. We don't really want a stranger living in our house. And we've got a bunch of family members we're trying to help out as well, as they're suffering from not the most responsible financial decisions, and we're just trying to help them out so that they don't fall into an even worse position. Just something to think about on that aspect. How can you leverage the assets you already have but aren't paying for themselves? What can you do on your spare time to make a little extra, but isn't going to stress you out too much? Whenever you're doing activities like getting ready for your sustainable lifestyle or something like that, go ahead and include your kids in it. If they're able to be included, why not? They don't necessarily have to like it. Just make sure they don't hate it. You don't want to force them into something that totally sucks. But you do want to spend some time with them, and when you're that pinned for time, you need to think of the most creative ways possible to include your children, include your spouse. If you don't have either of those, boy, you have a really easy time. You have the too much time problem, which, boy, I remember those days, and I don't know what I'd do with that much time right now. I've got so many things to do, I can't imagine it. Back then, I didn't know what to do with time either. So, fortunately, I filled it with reading and not a whole lot of video game time. So I was able to educate myself in that spare time. But all things to think about. How can you best leverage your time and use the little bit that you do have? And if you get a spare moment, think of a productive way to use it that's not too straining, but more relaxing. Plenty of ideas for that. Go ahead and throw them up in the comments if you can think of some good ones. I'd love to hear them. For example, I'm going to try Uber. That's a great way to make a little extra money, and potentially I can work on a show as well at the same time. I don't know how busy you really get. I'm still waiting on them to approve all my paperwork. Unfortunately, they've been taking an exorbitantly long time. And I keep sending me hate mail telling me I have more papers to fill in, but that's neither here nor there. That's just starting to get in my nerves a little bit. But it's one good way to bring in extra money now, pay those bills and get rid of those debt shackles. And on to the next segment. This kind of was brought up to me because of a conversation I had about my grandfather's estate recently being passed down, what happened there, my great-grandfather had a whole bunch of land that was given to him from his father, and he lived on it for, I think it wasn't more, he was raised on it. However, once he became an adult and actually took possession of the property, his father lived on it until he died. He was a furrier, somebody who does horses' hooves, puts horseshoes on them and things like that. But his father lived on it until he died after he handed it over to my great-grandfather. And he didn't live in it that long as an adult because his wife simply said she would never live in the country. My great-grandmother, God bless her, just didn't align quite with my beliefs. And neither of my grandfathers either. We're just country folk. But just kind of brings up a valid point, though, because when my great-grandfather died, he split the land up between my grandfather and his brother, and then paid for my grandfather's sister's college. So he wanted to be equitable and split all of his assets up the best he could. And he did a pretty good job of that, except he didn't think ahead enough, though. The fact that my grandfather's brother had no interest in ever living in the country. He considered himself too sophisticated, from what I understand. to ever live in the country. He wanted to live in the city and wanted to go to college, have a degree, get a job at a factory, which, I mean, he made excellent money, worked for Boeing, developing jet engines. Not to say he wasn't an intelligent man, because he absolutely was, but just didn't quite align with that vision that my great-grandfather had or my grandfather had. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me why you would split up things equitably whenever those people don't really have any buy-in or desire for what you're giving them. Why not give it to the children or whatever who are the most inclined to follow along that footsteps and best utilize the assets you're giving them? So you might think, well, just give whatever you can. Now you have to split it up evenly. Well, why? Why do you have to do that? Why would I give you a bicycle if you hate riding bikes? Why would I give you rock climbing gear if you're a paraplegic? It just doesn't make sense. You can't use it. It's not that I love you any more or less as a inheritant, but you don't have any use for it. You're not interested in that. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to give it where it's going to be best used. So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now my grandfather died. Land's being split up between his brother's family because my grandfather's brother passed away 3-4 years ago now. And his family has no interest in it. They've lived in California for decades. I think most of them actually were born and raised in California. And my grandfather's side of the family, we've all dispersed out of Pennsylvania, except for my dad. And now my dad's left managing all the estate. But either way, nobody's interested in it but me. And, well, I certainly don't have the money to buy that from them outright. And everybody more or less just wants the assets they can get out of it as it makes sense. You know, you get a whole chunk of land, you have no interest in the land. You're certainly not just going to give it to somebody. You do want whatever money you can get out of that to apply to things that make more sense to you, which is really what it boils down to. Why hand over an asset that's not going to be appropriately leveraged? So I've kind of made my own decision that whenever I hand things down, or at least put things in my will to be given over, I'm going to choose who can best use what asset. So maybe all the tools will go to one kid, maybe all the land will go to a specific kid, or maybe it'll be split between two, but with the intention that it will not be split up. And that's just my own wishes. What I'm getting at here, though, is a story on the Martin Luther King estate. The board of directors for that organization is all family except one person who is a close family friend. So they can't get any business decisions made because they all have too much emotion tied up in it. And there's been so much wrangling over the property over the last several decades that people just aren't donating money to it anymore. That and the fact that I believe it's 44% of all the money given to them goes to administrative costs, which if you've done any dealings with charities, that's exorbitantly high. And I know I don't donate to any charities that charge any more than 7%. That's just my rule of thumb. More than 7% and you're not getting my money. Typically, I mean, obviously I don't have enough money. Nobody does to donate to too many organizations. So I choose the ones with the lowest administrative costs. Doesn't mean they're going to be the most effective, but I do know that they're giving the most money to the actual cause that I'm giving it to. For instance, the Wounded Warrior Fund. I think they're close to, don't quote me, but I believe they're close to 70% administrative. It means only 30% actually goes to providing programs to wounded veterans. I mean, and I've seen them, they do put on some excellent programs, but we're 70% going. I'm sure that's not strictly advertising. Maybe it is. They do an excellent job advertising, but what's all that money worth if you're just putting it into more commercials? Seems kind of silly to me. But either way, one of the sisters now of Martin Luther King's children is now fighting with her brother, who wants to raffle off, or I guess not raffle, but he wants to have a private sale for his Nobel Peace Prize and his personal Bible, which he took with him everywhere. And those will bring a significant amount of money. And maybe the personal buyer just wants to ensure that they are taken care of and last a long time. Whatever reason they might have for that, that they have it. And so there's a personal individual who wants to purchase these items, and there's a huge dispute now. It's actually in court. And there have been several disputes like this, and it's not that any of the family members have negative interest. It's just that several of the family members have different opinions on what the best interests are for the organization, and more or less the lasting estate of Martin Luther King Jr. Just goes to make you think. If you're going to work your entire life to accomplish something, granted most of Martin Luther King Jr.'s estate is intellectual property, with just a little bit of physical property, more or less were just belongings. But just take a moment to think about that, as your life's work may be handed down to the next generation at any moment, because we don't pick our time to die. What do you want to happen? Do you want to see it dissolved because of conflict? For instance, my family property, it's going to be sold off more or less, and I think that's a real shame, because I would love to see that beautiful piece of property stay together, but it's just not the way it's going to happen. So think long and hard before you make any final decisions, and when you are making those final decisions, what do you want to come of it? What is most important? The happiness and equitability of everyone receiving your property when you're dead, or making sure that your life's work actually carries on and is taken care of the way you wish to see it taken care of. And that's all I've got for this segment. Now to finish up the show, I just wanted to hit on something I saw about Mark Miro, former WCW, WWE wrestler. Guy's got more money and he knows what to do with there. Done quite well for himself. He was doing a tour through some schools, and I'm sure it's part of a larger, don't do drugs campaign type thing. But his big takeaway was to take the time and show some care toward the people who have shown you care over the years. His specific point was his mother. She died whenever he was in Japan doing some show for WWE, I think it was. But he was more or less explaining how he'd treated her like crap as a teenager, like most of us do. We just don't appreciate those who are there for us, taking care of us. But he didn't really take the time to show her that he cared either as he was older. He had one picture that he brought up of him with one of his title belts from wrestling, and that was about it, though. He just didn't take much time to spend with his mom, and he was just heartbroken that whenever she died, because her entire life she dedicated everything to helping him and ensuring he succeeded, and all he could do was be a drug addict until he finally made it into wrestling by chance and made it. So that's all his mom ever wanted, but he just wanted the opportunity to say thank you and never got that. I can't say that I was lucky enough to see the necessity of the people who cared about me in life and show them that I did care before they died. That would have been one of the more difficult things in life had I not. So fortunately, I was able to learn that lesson a little bit earlier than he was. But I encourage all of you, go out there, just say thank you to those who have helped you along. And I thought that would dovetail on really well with the Martin Luther King thing, his family fighting over his estate. But with that, onto a lighter note, something to help all of you become a little more successful in your path to a more sustainable lifestyle and a sustainable farmstead, whatever your goals may be. And that is based off the book Glassjaw, just recently published. Honestly, I can't pronounce the guy's name. It's something starts with a D. Maybe it's Polish or Russian. I'm not real sure. However, the takeaway from that book, however, is learn how to take a hit. Big companies, that's his main job is more or less the Olivia Pope, but in the real world. And as he explains it, not nearly as sexy. There is no jumping into a phone conversation with the president and saying, we got this. It's already taken care of. Just wire us the money. And as he was explaining on, I think it was a Jerry Doyle show. I could be wrong. I forget where I was listening to it. But, excuse me. He was explaining there that more or less it's not as sexy. He said, I can be talking to BP and say, you can wire me $25,000 if you want. That's not going to make this go away. You can give me $1 million if you want. That's not going to make this go away. Why? Because people hate you. You're an oil company. And so that's just the benchmark. So the way to spin this into your own world is that if you're going to be making a permaculture farm or sustainable farm, people are going to hate you, especially other farmers. So you have to start out with that benchmark and think of ways to mitigate it. What are you going to do to make people not hate you so much? Some thoughts I have there are simply to not criticize people. As easy as it is, and as dumb as people can be, say, boy, maybe that wasn't a great decision, but don't jump onto the criticism train and say how stupid they are or how crappy of a job they did. Instead, maintain a more humble approach, and you can point out people's flaws on occasion, but don't make a habit of it. Instead of criticizing people and attacking them, defend them. You do that, and people see you doing that often enough, and it really it shows them that you have a greater character. And the thing is, fake it till you make it. If you're starting out with a crappy character, you can always improve it. Just keep pretending to have good character. Eventually, you will learn to have that better character. Character's a learned habit, absolutely. Just like criminal behavior, you learn it. Eventually, you learn that, acting in this certain type of way, and it's not like, I should just flip this switch and change, but it's more of a habit. So it's I guess you can say it's a learned habit. So eventually, through faking it enough, you will learn the habit of having positive character. Figure none of us start out with it. As punk kids, most of us are exactly that, punk kids. We don't know a whole lot and think we know everything. So it's obviously not that difficult to learn. Some of us start out a little better than others. I tell you, I was not one of the ones that started out better than anybody else, though. So, as you're starting your own farm, though, maybe start a meetup group. Before you start a meetup group. Get to know some politicians if you can in your area. We're talking city council, county commissioners, things like that. whatever your whoever's sphere of influence or whoever would influence you. Get to know them. Ensure they have a positive opinion of you. So whenever it does come down to blows of the EPA or FDA coming in because they don't like you selling something, or they just don't like you having a small farm pond, or whatever the case may be, if those local people have a positive opinion of you and like you, actually know you personally, they're going to do a whole lot more to help you out, rather than, sorry, I'm sorry. Nope, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The fact of the matter is, your neighbor or your friend needs help. You're going to help your friend over your neighbor, because chances are you've never actually met your neighbor. If you have, it's maybe been once or twice just in passing. You have no personal relationship built. So build those personal relationships. I'll probably get a little bit more into that in another episode. In fact, I might do that tomorrow. But just wanted to, kind of throw that in there. That it's not all about just starting a farm. It's not all about living that sustainable life, because the life itself isn't just one aspect. It is multiple aspects all intertwined together. So it's just something you need to think about. As most of us are more than happy, just like a farmer's more than happy to make food. He's not a good salesman. He doesn't want to be a salesman. That's why it's one of the reasons he's a terrible salesman, because he just wants to grow food. Well, if you want to be successful, and financially and farm-wise, and actually producing food, you need to take a look and actually embrace all the different aspects that affect that. With that, this is the end of the Path to Natural show. You have a great day, and continue on your own path to a more natural lifestyle.